Green Disc Studios presents.
All right, so my Franklin Audio SS-6, it is a stereo input switcher, has arrived from Australia. There's a guy, Nick Franklin, so he builds this box, and I'm a sucker for utility pedals, and always having, kind of idiosyncratic needs in my studio and wishing someone, would come up with this or that utility device. This thing has a bunch of inputs in the back. It's kind of like a DI box, but one where you can stick 6 stereo inputs, or you can use them as mono inputs, and then you can switch using this dial on the front here. Now, how one might use this, and this is a passive device, and it has XLR outs and DI through outs, ground lift switches, all that. You can use this in so many different ways. I've seen it online pitched as something to use with having multiple synths plugged into this, but I'm not a synth player. I have sort of a weird setup where I've got this Zoom L12 mixer with a bunch of things plugged in, and 2 of the inputs I have for my direct guitar signal. And I have a lot of direct guitar devices that I've used over the years. And I kind of don't want to get rid of any of them. I want to have them all as options, but I only really have these 2 inputs to play with. And that's where a device like this is just perfect. Already got a little slot in my studio set up for it. Right now I have a radial stereo DI in there with a bunch of cables thrown all over the place. But I'm going to have this SS-6 in there, and what I'm going to do is, I have several different direct options. Sorry, the lighting is terrible in my studio here, but we have the Boss IR2. Now that's a direct guitar device. It has an effects loop in it, and I have a bunch of stereo pedals connected to that effects loop, and I can get a certain amount of tones from the Boss IR2. But sometimes you're recording and there's just nothing in that little batch of tones is really quite hitting it. And I'm thinking, well, what about some of the other toys that I have? I've also got this Pod Express here, and it's connected up to some pedals, and it has its own little signature tones. And well, that's not all I have. I also have, over the years, here's a Thermion Zero, which is another direct guitar device. And I've got, I've got a whole collection of things I've used over the years. I just haven't gotten rid of the original simplifier, and of course, last but not least, the original, the Pod 2.0. So let's say you have all these devices hooked up in various little nooks of your studio, and you want to just be able to have them all as options. Well, I could have the Boss IR2 going into this. I could have the Pod Express going here, the Pod 2.0 here, the simplifier here, the Thermion Zero here, and even have room for one more. And one set of XLR outs going into my mixer. So in other words, I could be jamming away with the Boss IR2 here and think, you know what, let's try the Pod Express and see how that sounds. And then I have the Pod Express going into my mixer. And if I'm not quite satisfied with that and I want to try out some tones from the Thermion Zero, I could have that plugged into number 3 and just switch it. And that's one way a person could use this that wasn't a synth player. There's all kinds of ways. Also, I'm somebody who has all kinds of nooks and crannies in my studio set up here. This is kind of like a jam station full of old antique gear. Here's the Boss E-Band JS10, and let's unveil this here. We got the Digitech Trio, and I've got a 4-channel mixer here, and I've got it, more just old classic gear. This is a This is a Boss DR880. Now, if you have limited inputs to your mixer setup, and say I only had 2 available, and I wanted to have a way to switch between the Trio, the JS10, and the Boss DR880, and then even whatever else. Say I had, I wanted to plug the original Kaitana amp in there. Again, you can just connect all these sources into the back of this thing. One set of XLR outs in stereo, and then switch between them. And then you're only utilizing, one set of preamps in your mixer setup. So yeah, there you go. So the Franklin Audio SS-6, have not hooked it up yet, obviously. And once I do, maybe I'll add a little video clip to the end of this and let you all know how the setup worked out. But I'm excited to get this thing wired up, and I appreciate Nick, Franklin, and the rest of the crew building it, creating it, and sending it out to me. Thanks, guys. So just with this switcheroo here, I'm able to mess around with tones from all over my little nooks and crannies of my studio, and I can have a lot of fun. And all thanks to the kind folks at Franklin Audio. So anyway, I will master my setup here eventually, but again, this is Amateur Hour Gear Reviews. I'm still figuring things out. And that's it. Once again, thanks to Nick Franklin and the boys at Franklin Audio for the SS-6. I'm having a blast with it so far.